The research vessel Harmony's edge shuddered violently as plasma fire tore through its hull, sending sparks cascading across the cramped medical bay where Jenna Cross worked frantically over her patients. The ship's emergency lighting bathed everything in hellish red as another blast rocked the vessel, nearly throwing her across the room. "Dr. Cross, we need to evacuate now." Captain Torres's voice crackled through the intercom, barely audible over the screaming alarms and the groans of stressed metal. Jenna wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of alien blood across her pale skin. Around her, 3 wounded prisoners lay on makeshift medical beds, their breathing shallow but stable. 2 were human defectors who had been captured fighting alongside the Nexari resistance. The third was something else entirely. Kithra was magnificent even in his wounded state. The Nexari warrior stood nearly 7 feet tall, his powerful frame covered in deep midnight fur marked with intricate silver patterns that seemed to shift in the flickering light. His face was lupin but undeniably intelligent, with piercing amber eyes that held depths of wisdom and pain. Even unconscious, he radiated a primal strength that made Jenna's heart race in ways she didn't want to examine too closely. A massive gash ran along his left side where human pulse weapons had torn through his natural armor, and his breathing was labored from internal injuries. She had managed to stabilize him over the past 6 hours, working with medical techniques she had never tried on non-human physiology, but he needed more time to heal. The ship lurched again, and this time Jenna heard the unmistakable sound of the hull beginning to breach. They were going down. "All hands to evacuation pods," Torres shouted over the ship's speakers. "This is not a drill." Jenna looked at her patients. The 2 humans could be moved, barely, but Kithra was too critical. Moving him now would kill him as surely as leaving him behind. Her hands trembled as she made her choice. 20 minutes later, the evacuation pods had launched, carrying Captain Torres and the rest of the crew to safety. Jenna had helped load the 2 human prisoners into the medical pod, ensuring they would survive the journey. But when Torres had seen her preparing to load the unconscious Nexari warrior, his face had turned stone cold. "Leave it, Doctor," he had ordered, his voice sharp with authority. "Sir, he's a prisoner of war. We have obligations under the Geneva Accords." "The Geneva Accords don't apply to animals, Cross. That thing has probably killed dozens of our people. Let it die with the ship." "I won't abandon a patient, Captain. That goes against everything I swore as a doctor." Torres had grabbed her arm then, his grip tight enough to bruise. "I'm giving you a direct order, Doctor. Leave the alien and get to the pod." Jenna had looked into his eyes and seen the fear there, the hatred born of years of war and propaganda. She had gently pulled free of his grip and stepped back toward the medical bay. "No, sir. I respectfully refuse." The captain's face had flushed red with anger. "Then you're a traitor too, Cross. Don't expect any rescue when you come to your senses." The evacuation pod had sealed and launched, leaving Jenna alone with the dying alien warrior as the ship continued its death spiral toward the planet's surface. The crash landing was surprisingly gentle, thanks to the ship's emergency systems. The Harmony's edge skidded across a vast plain of crystalline sand before coming to rest against a formation of twisted metal trees that grew like sculptures from the alien soil. Jenna had strapped herself and Kithra into the medical bay's crash couches, and somehow they had both survived the impact. Now, in the eerie silence that followed, Jenna found herself truly alone with her patient for the first time. The ship's power was failing, but the medical equipment still hummed softly, keeping Kithra's vital signs stable. She had perhaps 6 hours of battery power left, maybe 8 if she was careful. She knelt beside the alien warrior, studying his face in the dim light. Up close, she could see the intelligence in his features, the way his expressions shifted even in unconsciousness as if he were dreaming. His fur was incredibly soft where it wasn't matted with blood, and she found herself stroking it gently as she checked his wounds. "What am I doing?" she whispered to herself. She was risking court-martial, possibly execution for treason, all for an enemy soldier she had never even spoken to. But something about Kithra called to her, something beyond professional duty or medical ethics. Maybe it was the way he had looked at her during those brief moments of consciousness, not with the hatred she expected, but with something like gratitude. Or maybe it was the gentle way he had allowed her to treat his wounds, never struggling or trying to bite, as if he understood she was trying to help. Her portable scanner beeped softly, indicating that his internal bleeding had finally stopped. The nanomedicines she had injected were working, slowly repairing the damage at a cellular level. He would live, if she could keep him stable for another day or two. As if responding to her thoughts, Kithra's eyes fluttered open. Those magnificent amber orbs focused on her face, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Then he tried to sit up, wincing as pain shot through his side. "Easy," Jenna said softly, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You're badly hurt. The nanomeds are still working." Kithra stared at her, his head tilted slightly in confusion. When he spoke, his voice was deep and resonant, like distant thunder. "You stayed." His English was accented but clear, and Jenna realized he must have learned it during his time as a prisoner. "Yes," she said simply. "I couldn't leave you to die." "Why?" The single word carried a weight of genuine bewilderment. "Your people, my people, we are enemies." Jenna considered the question, really considered it. Why had she risked everything for this alien warrior? "Because you're not an animal," she said finally. "You're a person. A living, thinking being who deserves medical care regardless of the politics." Kithra's eyes widened slightly, and she saw something shift in their depths. "Your captain, he called me a beast." "My captain is a fool," Jenna replied, surprising herself with the vehemence in her voice. "And he's gone. It's just us now." The alien warrior was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "Jenna Cross," he said finally, and her name sounded strangely musical in his deep voice. "I know your name from the medical records. I am Kithra of the Twilight Pack, Third Claw of the Northern Territories." "It's nice to properly meet you, Kithra," Jenna said, and found that she meant it. Over the following hours, as Kithra's strength slowly returned, they talked. He told her about his homeworld, with its purple skies and silver forests where his people ran free under twin moons. She told him about Earth, about the blue oceans and green fields that she missed terribly after years of space travel. They were from different worlds, different species, technically enemies in a war that had raged for decades. But sitting in the dim light of the crashed ship, sharing stories and tending to his wounds, Jenna began to feel something she had never expected. She was beginning to care about this alien warrior, not as a patient or even as a person, but as something more. Something that made her heart race and her skin tingle when he looked at her with those incredible amber eyes. As the ship's power finally began to fail and darkness closed in around them, Jenna realized that her choice to stay behind had changed everything. Not just for Kithra, who would have died without her care, but for herself. She was no longer just Dr. Jenna Cross, xenobiologist and field medic. She was something new, something unprecedented in the galaxy's long history of warfare and hatred. She was a human who had fallen in love with her enemy. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, as she felt Kithra's warm breath against her cheek and saw the way he looked at her with growing affection, it filled her with a strange sense of rightness. Outside the crashed ship, the alien world's twin moons rose into the night sky, casting everything in silver light. And inside, two beings from different worlds discovered that love could bloom even in the darkest of circumstances, even between species that were supposed to be mortal enemies. The real adventure was just beginning. 3 days had passed since the crash, and Jenna had managed to move Kithra to an abandoned mining facility she had discovered half a mile from the wreckage. The old complex was partially underground, carved into the living rock of Valethus Prime, providing both shelter and concealment from the search parties she knew would eventually come. The facility's power core was long dead, but Jenna had salvaged enough equipment from the crashed ship to create a makeshift medical station. Solar collectors she had rigged outside provided minimal power during the day, enough to keep Kithra's monitoring equipment running and maintain a small food synthesizer. Kithra was healing faster than she had expected. The Nexari physiology was remarkably resilient, and the nanomedicines were proving more effective on his alien biology than her training had suggested possible. He could now move around the facility without assistance, though she insisted he take things slowly. What surprised her more than his physical recovery was how comfortable they had become with each other. The initial awkwardness of enemy soldier and human medic had given way to something deeper, more intimate. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, sharing stories of their worlds, their dreams, their fears. "Tell me about your pack," Jenna said one evening as they sat together watching the sunset through a crack in the facility's outer wall. The alien world's twin suns painted the sky in shades of purple and gold that took her breath away. Kithra's expression grew distant, tinged with sadness. "The Twilight Pack was my family, my everything. We were warriors, yes, but also poets and storytellers. My pack sister Zenith could sing the stars to sleep with her voice. My pack brother Theron could track a whisper across stone." He paused, his amber eyes reflecting the dying light. "I do not know if any of them still live." Jenna reached out instinctively, her hand covering his larger one. His fur was warm beneath her palm, and she felt him tense slightly at the contact before relaxing. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "This war has taken so much from everyone." "What of your family, Jenna Cross?" he asked, turning his hand palm up so their fingers could intertwine. "Do you have a mate waiting for you among the stars?" The question sent a flutter through her chest. "No," she said softly. "No mate. My work was always my life. Exploring new worlds, studying alien biology, healing the wounded. I never found someone who understood that calling." "And yet you gave up that calling to save an enemy," Kithra observed, his voice gentle but probing. Jenna looked into his eyes, those magnificent amber pools that seemed to see straight through to her soul. "Maybe I found something more important," she whispered. The moment stretched between them, electric with possibility. Kithra's free hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw with surprising gentleness. "Jenna," he breathed, and her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. She leaned into his touch, her heart racing. This was madness, she knew. They were from different species, different worlds, enemies in a war that had raged for decades. But when he looked at her like that, when his touch sent fire racing through her veins, none of that seemed to matter. "Kithra," she whispered back, and then his lips were on hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if he was afraid of hurting her with his strength. But when she responded, her arms winding around his neck and pulling him closer, his restraint melted away. His kiss deepened, passionate and hungry, and she tasted something wild and primal on his lips that made her head spin. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Kithra rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. "This is dangerous," he murmured. "For both of us." "I know," Jenna replied, her fingers tracing the silver patterns in his fur. "I don't care. Your people will call you traitor. Mine will name me Oathbreaker." His voice was pained, torn between desire and duty. "Then we'll face it together," she said firmly. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together." That night, they made love under the alien stars visible through the facility's broken ceiling. Kithra was incredibly gentle with her, his powerful hands reverent as they explored her body, as if she were something precious and fragile. She discovered that his fur was softest along his throat and chest, that he made the most incredible sounds when she kissed the sensitive spots behind his ears, that his strength was matched only by his tenderness. Afterward, she lay curled against his chest, listening to the dual rhythm of his heart's beating beneath her ear. She had never felt so complete, so perfectly matched to another being. It should have been impossible, this connection between human and alien, but it felt more natural than anything she had ever experienced. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Kithra's arms tightened around her. "And I love you, my brave little healer. More than the moons love the night sky. More than the pack loves the hunt." They were beautiful words, poetic in the way of his people, and they made her heart soar even as a part of her mind whispered warnings about the impossibility of their situation. The warnings proved prophetic when, 3 days later, the first search ship appeared on the horizon. Jenna spotted it through her makeshift periscope, a sleek human vessel moving in a grid pattern across the landscape. "They're looking for survivors," she told Kithra as he joined her at the observation post. "Or for bodies to recover," he said grimly. "Your Captain Torres would want proof that the alien prisoner died in the crash." "We need to stay hidden," Jenna said. "If they find us, they will separate us," Kithra finished. "You will face court-martial. I will face execution." They spent the next several hours in tense silence as the search ship made its methodical sweep of the area. It passed close enough to the mining facility that Jenna could see the human military markings on its hull, close enough that she held her breath and pressed herself against Kithra's solid warmth. The ship moved on without detecting them, but both knew it would return. "We cannot stay here much longer," Kithra said that evening as they shared a meal of synthesized protein bars and recycled water. "More ships will come. Eventually, they will find us. Then we run," Jenna said simply. "There are other continents on this world, places where we could hide. And live as fugitives for the rest of our lives." Kithra shook his head. "You deserve better than that, beloved. You deserve to return to your people, to continue your work." "My work means nothing without you," she said fiercely. "Don't you understand? You're not just some alien I'm treating anymore. You're the other half of my soul." Kithra's eyes glowed with emotion. "As you are mine. But our love alone cannot end this war. Cannot bridge the hatred between our peoples." "Maybe it can," Jenna said suddenly, an idea forming in her mind. "Maybe our love is exactly what they need to see. Proof that we're not so different, that peace is possible." Before Kithra could respond, alarms began blaring from Jenna's salvaged equipment. The proximity sensors she had placed around the facility were going off, warning of approaching movement. But this time, it wasn't a human search ship. Through the periscope, Jenna saw a figure moving across the landscape with inhuman grace and speed. It was another Nexari, female, with fur the color of starlight and eyes like blue fire. She moved directly toward their position with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where she was going. "Zenith," Kithra breathed, recognition and fear warring in his voice. "Your pack sister?" Jenna asked. "Yes. And if she has found us, others will not be far behind." The female Nexari reached the facility's entrance and called out in a language that sounded like wind through silver bells. Kithra responded, his voice tense, and a rapid conversation followed in what Jenna assumed was their native tongue. "What is she saying?" Jenna whispered. "She wants me to come with her," Kithra replied, his voice heavy with sorrow. "The pack has been searching for me. They believe you are holding me prisoner, using me for some human experiment. And if you don't come, then she will call for the war party, and they will take you by force." Jenna felt her heart breaking. After everything they had shared, after the love they had discovered, it was going to end with them torn apart by their respective peoples. "Then go," she whispered. "Go with her." Kithra turned to her, his amber eyes blazing with fierce emotion. "No. I will not leave you. Not again. Not ever." He stood and walked to the facility's entrance, calling out to his pack sister in their musical language. Jenna couldn't understand the words, but she could hear the finality in his tone, the absolute certainty. Zenith's response was sharp, angry, but Kithra remained unmoved. The conversation continued for several more minutes before the female Nexari finally fell silent. "What did you tell her?" Jenna asked when Kithra returned to her side. "I told her the truth," he said simply. "That you saved my life when your own people would have left me to die. That you are not my captor but my chosen mate. That I love you more than pack or duty or honor." "And what did she say?" Kithra smiled, and it was the first truly happy expression she had seen on his face since they met. She said she wants to meet the human female who could steal the heart of the fiercest warrior in the Twilight Pack. As if summoned by his words, Zenith appeared in the doorway of their shelter. Up close, she was breathtaking, tall and graceful with an ethereal beauty that spoke of moonlight and mystery. But her blue eyes were sharp and intelligent as they studied Jenna with undisguised curiosity. "So," she said in accented but clear English, "you are the human who has bewitched my pack brother." Jenna stood slowly, acutely aware that she was being evaluated by a predator who could probably kill her before she could blink. "I prefer to think we bewitched each other," she replied steadily. Zenith circled them both, her gaze moving between Jenna and Kithra with scientific interest. "You smell of each other," she observed. "Your scents are mingled, bonded. This is not mere attraction or gratitude." "No," Kithra said firmly. "This is love. True love, of the kind that comes once in a lifetime and changes everything." The female Nexary stopped her circling and stared at them both for a long moment. Then, to Jenna's amazement, she threw back her head and laughed, a sound like silver chimes in the wind. "Oh, pack brother," she said, still chuckling. "You have certainly made things interesting. Do you realize that both our peoples will consider this the ultimate betrayal?" "I know," Kithra replied solemnly. "But I also know that I would rather face exile with her than live without her." Zenith's expression grew serious. "Then you had better prepare for the fight of your lives. Because both the human fleet and the Nexary War Council are coming to collect their wayward children." Outside, as if summoned by her words, the distant rumble of engines filled the air. Ships were approaching from both directions, human and alien, converging on their location with deadly intent. Jenna took Kithra's hand, intertwining their fingers as they faced the approaching storm together. Whatever came next, whatever trials their forbidden love would face, they would meet them as one. Their love story was about to become legend, written in starlight and sealed in blood. The ground shook as the first ships touched down around the mining facility. Through the cracked walls, Jenna could see the organized deployment of both human and Nexary forces, their respective military machines working with deadly efficiency despite being enemies themselves. The irony wasn't lost on her that their forbidden love had managed to bring together two warring species, even if it was to tear them apart. 12 human dropships, eastern approach, Zenith reported from her position at the observation post. 8 Nexary war cruisers, western ridge. They're coordinating their movements but maintaining separate command structures. Kithra's hand tightened around Jenna's as they watched the forces surround their sanctuary. "They mean to take us alive," he said grimly. "Otherwise they would have simply bombarded the facility from orbit." "Lucky us," Jenna muttered, trying to keep the fear out of her voice. She had known this moment would come, but seeing the overwhelming force arrayed against them made her stomach churn with dread. A voice amplified by military speakers echoed across the landscape, cold and authoritative. "Dr. Jenna Cross, by order of Admiral Morrison of the Terran Defense Fleet, you are commanded to surrender yourself immediately. You are charged with treason, desertion, and collaboration with enemy forces." Almost immediately, another voice followed, this one speaking in the musical language of the Nexary before switching to accented English. "Kithra of the Twilight Pack, War Alpha Grimjaw commands your immediate return. Your dishonor brings shame upon your ancestors and threatens the unity of all packs." Zenith's ears flattened against her skull. "Grimjaw himself came," she whispered. "This is worse than I thought. He was always jealous of your reputation, pack brother. He sees this as an opportunity to destroy you completely." "Then let him come," Kithra growled, his voice carrying a dangerous edge that reminded Jenna of the legendary warrior he had been. "I have faced death many times. I do not fear it now." "But I do," Jenna said softly, her voice breaking slightly. "I fear losing you. I fear watching them drag you away or worse." Kithra turned to her, his amber eyes blazing with fierce love. "Then we do not let them separate us. Whatever happens, we face it together." The speakers crackled again, this time with a new voice that made Zenith snarl with recognition. "How touching," came the cultured tones of War Alpha Grimjaw. The mighty Kithra, reduced to hiding behind a human female like a beaten whelp. He's trying to provoke you, Jenna warned, seeing the way Kithra's muscles tensed. I know his games, Kithra replied, but his voice was tight with barely controlled rage. Admiral Morrison's voice cut through the air next, equally calculated to wound. Dr. Cross, you were one of our most promising xenobiologists. To see you reduced to this, it's pathetic. You're nothing but an alien's plaything now. Ignore them, Zenith advised. They seek to make you angry, to force mistakes. But their words were having an effect. Jenna could feel the weight of shame and doubt pressing down on her. Had she really thrown away her career, her life, her future for what others would call a perversion? Was their love worth all this pain and suffering? As if sensing her thoughts, Kithra pulled her close, his large hands framing her face gently. Look at me, beloved, he whispered. See the truth in my eyes. What we have is not shameful or wrong. It is the most beautiful thing in a galaxy full of darkness. She looked into those magnificent amber depths and saw nothing but love, pure and true and unwavering. Her doubts melted away, replaced by fierce determination. You're right, she whispered back. What we have is worth fighting for. Then let us show them, Kithra said, and there was something in his voice that sent shivers down her spine. Let us show them what love can do. Before she could ask what he meant, the facility's main entrance exploded inward. Human soldiers in powered armor poured through the breach, followed immediately by Nexari warriors in ceremonial battle gear. The two forces maintained careful distance from each other even as they surrounded the three figures in the center of the room. Admiral Morrison strode in behind his troops, a tall man with silver hair and cold gray eyes that spoke of years spent making hard decisions. He was flanked by his command staff, all wearing expressions of disgust and disappointment. From the opposite entrance came War Alpha Grimjaw, and Jenna understood immediately why even Kithra spoke his name with respect and hatred. The Nexari leader was massive, even by the standards of his species, with scars covering his dark fur and eyes like chips of ice. He radiated an aura of controlled violence that made the air itself seem dangerous. So, Admiral Morrison said, his voice echoing in the confined space. The traitor and her pet. Choose your words carefully, human, Grimjaw snarled, his lips pulling back to reveal fangs that could tear through steel. You speak of one who was once the greatest warrior of our people. Was being the operative term, Morrison replied coolly. Now he's nothing but a curiosity, seduced by human pheromones and genetic manipulation. Kithra's growl shook dust from the ceiling. Speak one more word against my mate, and war truce or not, I will tear your throat out. Mate? Grimjaw's voice carried a note of horrified disbelief. You claim this human as packmate? This is impossible. This is abomination. This is love, Jenna said, stepping forward despite the weapons trained on her. Something neither of your people seem to understand anymore. Love? Admiral Morrison laughed bitterly. Is that what you call this perversion? Dr. Cross, you've been contaminated by alien pheromones, possibly subjected to some form of mental conditioning. Our medical team can reverse the damage. There is no damage, Jenna said firmly. And there is no conditioning. I chose this. I chose him. I chose love over the hatred you've all been spreading across the galaxy. Then you chose poorly, Morrison replied. Sergeant, prepare the neural inhibitor. We'll extract Dr. Cross and leave the alien for the Nexari to deal with. No one touches her, Kithra said, moving to shield Jenna with his body. Around them, weapons raised and targeting systems locked on. Stand down, Patriarch, Grimjaw commanded. Accept your shame with dignity and perhaps your death will be swift. Zenith stepped forward then, her voice ringing with authority that surprised everyone. Wait, she said. By ancient law, I invoke the right of challenge. Both leaders turned to stare at her. What are you doing, Pack Sister? Kithra whispered. What should have been done long ago, she replied. War Alpha Grimjaw, I challenge your authority to judge this matter. Ancient law states that disputes of honor and heart must be settled by combat, not execution. Grimjaw's eyes narrowed dangerously. You would challenge me, whelp? Not me, Zenith said with a smile that showed far too many teeth. Him. She pointed at Kithra. Let the greatest warrior of our generation prove the strength of his convictions in single combat. This is ridiculous, Admiral Morrison interjected. We're not here to watch some primitive ritual combat. Actually, said a new voice from the entrance, I think you are. Everyone turned to see a figure in diplomatic robes entering the facility. Jenna recognized Ambassador Chen from the peace negotiations, but what was she doing here? Ambassador, Morrison said with barely concealed irritation. This is a military matter. This is a diplomatic opportunity, Chen replied calmly. Do you realize what we have here? The first documented case of genuine interspecies romantic bonding in galactic history. The scientific implications alone are staggering. It's an abomination, Grimjaw snarled. It's evolution, Chen countered. The next step in interspecies relations. And if we handle this correctly, it could be the key to ending this war. She moved to stand between the two forces, her presence somehow commanding despite her small stature. I propose a test. Let these two prove the strength of their bond through trial by combat, as the Nexary tradition demands. If they succeed, both species acknowledge their union and begin serious peace negotiations. If they fail, they die, Grimjaw finished with satisfaction. Agreed, Morrison said after a moment. But we choose the terms of combat. As do we, Grimjaw replied. Chen nodded. Then let it be a trial that tests not just strength, but the very foundation of their claimed bond. 3 challenges, one of physical prowess, one of mental acuity, and one of emotional truth. Jenna felt her heart racing. What exactly are you proposing? A chance to prove your love is real, Chen said simply. And if it is, to change the course of galactic history. Kithra's hand found hers, strong and warm and steady. We accept, he said without hesitation. As do I, Jenna added, squeezing his fingers. The first challenge was physical, as expected. A combat arena was hastily constructed outside the facility, with both human and Nexary forces forming a circle around the perimeter. The rules were simple. Kithra would face 3 opponents of the War Alpha's choosing, but Jenna would be chained to him, her life depending on his ability to protect her while fighting. This is impossible, she whispered as the energy shackles were fastened around their wrists. How can you fight effectively while protecting me? By trusting you to be my strength rather than my weakness, he replied, and kissed her forehead gently. The 3 Nexary warriors who entered the arena were chosen specifically to exploit Kithra's handicap. They moved with coordinated precision, trying to use Jenna as a target to force him into defensive positions. But something beautiful happened as the battle progressed. Instead of being a liability, Jenna became his anchor. She anticipated his movements, ducked when he needed to strike, provided leverage when he needed to leap. They moved together like dancers, like lovers, like 2 beings who had become one. When one warrior came too close to her, she actually managed to trip him, allowing Kithra to land the finishing blow. The arena fell silent as the last opponent yielded. Even Grimjaw looked impressed despite himself. The second challenge was mental, a complex puzzle that required both human scientific knowledge and Nexary intuitive understanding to solve. They were given 1 hour to decode an ancient star map that supposedly led to a legendary neutral world where peace treaties could be signed. Working together, their different approaches to problem-solving complemented each other perfectly. Jenna's systematic analysis combined with Kithra's intuitive leaps of logic, and they solved the puzzle in 37 minutes. But it was the third challenge that would determine everything. Emotional truth, Ambassador Chen announced. Each of you will be subjected to a neural probe that will reveal your deepest thoughts and feelings. If either shows any deception, any doubt about your bond, you both forfeit your lives. Jenna's mouth went dry. She loved Kithra completely, but everyone had doubts, fears, moments of uncertainty. What if the probe detected some fleeting moment of hesitation? I'm scared, she whispered to him as the neural crown was lowered onto her head. So am I, he admitted, his own crown glowing as it activated. But I am not scared of the truth of my love for you. That burns brighter than any star. The probe activated, and suddenly Jenna's thoughts were laid bare for everyone to see. They saw her first moment of attraction to the wounded warrior, her growing respect for his nobility, her wonder at discovering someone who understood her completely. They saw her doubts, yes, but also her absolute certainty that she would rather die with him than live without him. From Kithra's mind came images of a human woman who had risked everything to save an enemy, who had shown him kindness when his own people would have left him to die, who had awakened something in his soul he never knew existed. His love was primal and pure, untainted by doubt or reservation. But most incredibly, the probes showed something else. They showed how their bond had actually changed them on a genetic level, their bodies adapting to each other, their minds synchronizing in ways that science couldn't fully explain. Impossible, Admiral Morrison breathed. Their neural patterns are actually harmonizing. By the ancestors, Grimjaw whispered. They are becoming pack-bonded. True pack-bonded. Ambassador Chen smiled triumphantly. Gentlemen, what we're witnessing is not just love. It's evolution. The birth of a new kind of connection between our species. The probes were removed, and Jenna found herself looking into Kithra's eyes as tears of wonder rolled down her cheeks. Around them, the gathered forces of both species stared in amazement at what they had witnessed. The challenges are complete, Chen announced. The bond is proven beyond question. Now, Admiral Morrison, War Alpha Grimjaw, will you honor your agreement? For a long moment, neither leader spoke. Then Grimjaw stepped forward, his massive form somehow less threatening than before. I have seen the truth of their bond, he said solemnly. By ancient law and sacred honor, I acknowledge Kithra and his chosen mate. Let none question their union. Admiral Morrison's jaw worked silently for several seconds before he finally nodded. The scientific implications are significant. I hereby rescind all charges against Dr. Cross and authorize the establishment of the first interspecies cultural exchange program. The cheer that went up from both human and Nexari observers shook the very ground. Jenna threw herself into Kithra's arms, and he spun her around, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. We did it, she whispered against his fur. We actually did it. No, beloved, he corrected gently. We began it. This is just the first chapter of our story. As the twin suns set over Valethus Prime, casting the assembled crowds in golden light, Jenna and Kithra stood together as living proof that love could indeed conquer all. Their forbidden romance had become the foundation for a new age of peace and understanding between the stars. Months later, their wedding would be broadcast across the galaxy, the first interspecies ceremony of its kind. Years later, they would establish the first mixed colony world, where humans and Nexari lived and worked together as equals. Decades later, their children would grow up in a galaxy where love knew no boundaries of species or star system. But in that moment, as the crowds cheered and the future stretched bright before them, Jenna and Kithra simply held each other and marveled at the power of love to change the universe itself. Their story had become legend, written in starlight and sealed with devotion that would echo through eternity. And somewhere in the depths of space, other star-crossed lovers would look up at the night sky and know that anything was possible when hearts beat as one across the vast distances between worlds.